Have you ever felt a cold, unseen presence lurking in the shadows? Now let's delve into the life of a certain young man named Rahim. A staunch skeptic, Rahim had always dismissed anything that fell outside the boundaries of logic and reason. The supernatural, the paranormal. To him, they were nothing more than figments of one's overactive imagination. In his quest for solitude, Rahim found himself moving into an old, dilapidated house in a remote village in Bangladesh. The house, standing in stark contrast to the vibrant, bustling city life he was accustomed to, had an eerie charm that piqued Rahim's interest. However, the villagers warned him against it. They spoke of chilling tales, of hushed whispers that echoed through the house at night, of cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere, of shadows that moved on their own. They spoke of a presence that had made the house its dwelling. The house, they claimed, was haunted. But Rahim, with his unwavering disbelief in the supernatural, laughed off their concerns. He saw the villagers as simple folks, easily swayed by superstition and folklore. He saw their warnings as nothing more than tales spun by the village elder to keep the children in check. Moving into the house, he was unperturbed by its gloomy atmosphere. The creaking floorboards, the wind whistling through the gaps, the flickering candlelight, they were just quirks of an old house, he reasoned, nothing more. And so, Rahim settled into his new home, dismissing the villagers' warnings as mere tales. He was confident, secure in his belief that there was a logical explanation for everything, that the supernatural was nothing more than a figment of one's imagination. Little did Rahim know he was about to experience the unimaginable. What happens when the unseen starts to make itself felt? In the heart of the city, nestled among the bustling streets, lives a man named Rahim. His home, a relic of days past, is cloaked in silence, save for the occasional creaks and murmurs of an old house. But recently the silence has been broken by events that are anything but ordinary. Rahim starts to see the world around him with a new, uncanny perspective. Objects, once firmly grounded by the laws of physics, begin to defy gravity, shifting and moving in ways that seem impossible. A cup here, a book there, and then larger items, all moving as if guided by an unseen hand. Then there are the whispers, soft, almost inaudible. They creep into his consciousness late at night when the world is asleep. They are unintelligible, a low hum in the darkness, but they are there, and they are persistent. But what shakes Rahim the most is the cold, an icy chill that seeps into certain rooms, turning warmth into frost and comfort into dread. It's a cold that's not of this world, a cold that lingers in the air, a cold that sends shivers down his spine. At first, Rahim tries to rationalize these events. He tells himself it's the house settling, the wind whistling, the winter creeping in. But as the days pass, his skepticism starts to wane. The rational explanations no longer suffice, and he is left with a feeling of unease that he cannot shake off. His world, once familiar and safe, now feels alien and menacing. His home, once a refuge, now feels like a stage for the unseen to play its eerie games. What was happening? Was he losing his mind? Or was there something else dwelling in his home? And then, one night, the unseen decided to reveal itself. What would you do if you came face to face with your worst fear? In the dead of night, Rahim found himself standing in the chilling silence of his old, creaky house, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. His skeptical mind was about to get a rude awakening. Suddenly, he felt a cold gust of wind. The hairs on his neck stood on end, and there, right in front of him, appeared the spectral figure of a woman. She was no ordinary woman, but the ghost of one who had once breathed life within these very walls. Her eyes, hollow and piercing, bore into his soul, sending shivers down his spine. Her voice, a mere whisper, echoed through the desolate halls, enveloping him in a chilling tale of her past. She had been a resident of this house, living a life of joy and laughter until tragedy struck. A life cut short, dreams shattered, leaving her trapped in an eternal loop of despair and longing. Her tragic tale was a mirror to the sorrow that had enveloped the house, casting a dark, foreboding shadow. Rahim, once a skeptic, found himself drawn into her sorrowful story, his disbelief melting away. This was no trick of the mind, no figment of his imagination. It was a stark reality that shook him to his core, a reality that existed beyond the realm of the living, within the thin veil separating life and death. He looked into the spectral woman's eyes, seeing the pain and desperation etched in them. Her plea for help resonated within him, touching a part of his soul he never knew existed. It was a plea for peace, for release from her eternal torment. Rahim was no longer the skeptic. He was the believer who had been chosen to help a tormented soul find its peace, to help her break free from the chains of her past. The terrifying revelation had changed him, had changed the course of his life. Rahim decided he had to help this tormented soul find peace. How far would you go to help a spirit find peace? It's a question that Rahim, our brave protagonist, didn't have to ponder for long. He was determined to help the tormented soul, to free it from the chains of its past. Rahim's journey led him to the dark recesses of the old house's history, its dusty corners whispering tales of horror and injustice. The spirit was once a woman who lived within these walls, a woman whose life was marred by unspeakable atrocities. The house, once a symbol of joy and warmth, had turned into an eerie monument of her suffering. As Rahim delved deeper into this history, he unearthed the vile deeds committed by those who were supposed to protect and care for her. The villagers living in blissful ignorance were in fact the silent custodians of the woman's misery. And so Rahim decided to confront them with the truth. He narrated the woman's story, her agony echoing in his voice, reverberating through the crowd. The villagers, once deaf to her pleas, now couldn't escape the haunting reality of their actions. The air was heavy with remorse and guilt, the villagers' faces a mirror of the horror they had unwittingly been a part of. But with this confrontation, a transformation began. The villagers, weighed down by guilt, started seeking redemption. They prayed for the woman's soul, their voices finally joining hers in a chorus of sorrow and repentance. Rahim, our beacon in this dark tale, had managed to do what seemed impossible. He had not only unmasked the truth, but also ignited a spark of humanity in the hearts of the villagers. Finally, with Rahim's help, the spirit found peace and moved on. The house, once a vessel of her torment, now stood as a testament to her journey to peace. And Rahim, he continued on his path, a silent guardian for those voices that had been lost in the echoes of time. Can one ever truly return to normalcy after such a chilling encounter? The question hangs in the air like an eerie mist, wrapping us in its shroud of uncertainty. But changes, they say, are the only constant. And change, Rahim did. Our dear acquaintance Rahim, once a skeptic, now stands transformed. His life, drastically redefined by the encounter, takes on a new hue, a shade that's more understanding, more compassionate. He becomes someone who no longer dismisses the unknown but embraces it. Someone who realizes that the line separating the living from the dead is as thin as a gossamer thread. The house, once a mere dwelling, now becomes a sanctuary of coexistence. Rahim continues to reside there, not out of defiance, but out of respect for the unseen. His skepticism has dissolved, replaced by a newfound understanding of the delicate balance between life and death, between seen and unseen. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind now holds a deeper meaning for him. He doesn't shudder at these sounds. Instead, he acknowledges them, understanding that they are not merely noises, but voices from the other side, seeking acknowledgement, seeking peace. Rahim's perspective on life and death has been forever altered by this chilling encounter. He no longer lives merely for the living, but also for those who have passed on, understanding that their essence still lingers, still touches our world in ways we often fail to comprehend. And so Rahim's chilling encounter ends, leaving us with a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. Do not forget, dear listener, that in every corner of the world, in every nook and cranny, there are stories waiting to be told, tales waiting to send shivers down our spines. Until we meet again, remember, the world is far more mysterious than we can ever fathom.